Hello, this is Ty Newell with COVID status report number 27, titled Insanity, posted as of October 18th, 2020. I don't know, is everyone taking crazy pills in the government? Uh, they haven't that much difficulty controlling this very controllable disaster. We've surpassed 8 million infections in the US, more than 220,000 deaths, and it's going to keep going. We are at the very beginning of this. If this runs its course because of a horrible management of this disease, we're going to hit 200 million infections. 8 million is nothing compared to where this is going. Okay? And to put this in perspective, as horrific as the atomic bombs, and that we hopefully never, ever see that again on Hiroshima and Nagasaki over a 4-month period when the bombs did their destruction, 236,000 were estimated to have been killed. COVID in the US will be killing more people than the atomic bombs in Japan. Herd immunity is stupid. I thought we squashed this thing several months ago, back in May, as it was being discussed. Oh, look at Sweden. Well, yeah, look at Sweden. Sweden did an about face as they saw, yes, this is stupid, and it's coming up again. This slide that I show from back in May, Norway and Sweden, similar countries, similar geographies, located next to each other, a similar initial path. The red circle shows where Sweden said, let's go for herd immunity when they're at a couple hundred infections per day. Norway was similarly at that point and said, let's shut it down and get it in control. Well, Sweden went along its merry way, and then they finally decided, yeah, this is stupid. Hospital beds overflowing, people dying. They put it in control and finally got back on the path like Norway. Europe is now screaming out of control as people got lackadaisical, started to think, hey, we've got this under control. And now it's raging with a similar manner as in the US. Get it back in control. Coupled with that was that it's colder in Europe than it is currently in the US. So people started going in. Indoors is bad without proper ventilation and filtration, as we've been talking about. You get wild infections. We've been given a warning. Let's get this in control. Insanity. Maybe one definition, carelessly reopening businesses again and again and expecting a different outcome. And what's even worse, you take Blotus, the biggest liar of the United States, mix in a big mouth commentator from unreliable fake news outlet, and you get horrific pandemic device. This advisor who is saying herd immunity, face masks do nothing. This person who is a medical professional, but a radiologist. Why would you bring in a radiologist when you have a battalion of professional infectious disease and epidemiologists? Why would you ignore the professionals that specialize in infections and bring in a big mouth radiologist? Would you visit a proctologist for a sore throat? Now, this surge, it's not a surge. It's very predictable. It's not magic. It's understandable. It's controllable. It requires leadership with consistent, coherent, and unifying messages. And to show you how predictable it is, here I am, an old fart sitting in the middle of nowhere with pencil and paper this infection parameter we talked about. Let's say it's 14, and thankfully it's not there right now, but it could. Have another rose garden party and it could be there in a snap. With that infection parameter and some unit conversions, this gives a parameter A that of 0.2. And it's just like compounding interests. A new number of infections is equal to an old number of infections, with that old number multiplied by its interest rate, this infection parameter. And so on day one, we take an infected person and we infect zero point 0.2 others. Now we have 1.2 infected people. Take that 1.2 infected people and then multiply that by our interest rate again. Now we've got 1.44. Move that on, and you get the idea. Day one through day 13, 14, 15. And so over here, we see that that infection parameter we've been discussing for months now roughly means the number of people infected by a single infectious person. They're not being careful. And so it's not a surge, it's not a sudden jump. It is very gradual, just like someone's interest bearing account. And then it starts rapidly accelerating. But it started way back here. It took its sweet time, but it's roaring out of control if you don't keep it managed. That's what's happening. We've understood this. But again, poor leadership, ignoring the science, it puts you in this spot over and over and over again. To show you how predictable it is, I've been predicting 10 different states. If you go to the Med Archive, I posted online, you can see the details of these. I posted an initial article in the beginning of August, then in the beginning of September, and now in the beginning of October, and we'll do so again in November. But this is what the current stuff looks like. So I started this prediction model near the end of July, and here's New York. Looks like August when I compare the real data with the prediction, lays on top of it. Here goes September, and now going into October. And these different lines, which are also here, but they start to fan out in October. This is the effect of schools opening, the effect of fall temperatures, which are actually a beneficial effect for about a month or two in most of the US. And basically, the most likely and say the most desirable outcome is to be somewhere between the purple and green. And red is an effect that means, well, we're being even less careful. And that means don't listen to a radiologist, a proctologist, or somebody who has no business telling you what to do. So here's New York. Here's North Carolina. Following within the bounds of these likely outcomes, let's go on to Washington and Georgia. Georgia, which did so poorly during the so-called summer surge, but again, very predictable because of careless reopening by their governor, that then when they recoiled from that, they actually are still benefiting from smart people not listening to their government and still being somewhat cautious, but you can see a bit of an upturn. So it looks like they're getting ready to get up into this area. And then looking over at Washington, probably one of the best managed states. Vermont is another, as well as New York, of states to emulate. But they still have to stay on top of it. You can see that they've got much less spread here than Georgia. Georgia could go flying up here in a heartbeat. Washington struggling, they're actively managing, and I hope they stay along this path, one that could get COVID to decay. We go over to Florida and Illinois. Florida, similar to Georgia, and in California, as we'll see, recoiled from, again, the stupid pronouncements of their governor, to reopen carelessly, have lots of activity at bars and no masking. And what do you get? Well, the blue, green, purple lines are here because they don't have much of a temperature effect. They're a little bit lower, but you can see they're getting ready to get back up into this range, and hopefully not over here. I think they would recoil if they start going up too fast, but we'll see. And then Illinois, which has had this very complex relationship, uh, and unfortunately starting to accelerate out of control. They should have been able to manage this, but so-called isolation fatigue, but really it's just people being careless, people thinking, oh, you know, Bloda says we can reopen. Bloda says we don't have to be careful, don't need masks. He made it through with only 10 doctors and medications that no one else in the world can get. So maybe it's not that bad. And going on to California, Minnesota, California is still hanging in there, doing okay, but you can see they're getting ready to get over to this boundary and will probably be in here before long. But also getting impacted uh, by uncontrolled fire. And it's not clear whether fire was beneficial in terms of COVID. Of course, it's economically and destructive as well as a disruption to people's lives. Uh, but did it also cause people to stay more isolated as they stayed indoors to keep out of the smoke? Or did it perhaps cause people to not be so isolated, and it's causing the infection rate to grow? Minnesota, similar to other Midwestern states, um, unfortunately starting to gravitate up to this instead of staying along this more baseline case. But still, there's a chance to keep it in control and to not get up into this range. And then finally, Michigan, Ohio, you're losing it. You're starting to careen up here. You're doing fine. Ohio, you got careless. Michigan, you had it in control. And now you're both following a similar path. I hope you get it together. So let's end on a good note. As we had been telling you over and over and over again, way before CDC uh, finally decided to tell you that it's airborne, keep indoor air at 800 parts per million or less of carbon dioxide. Buy a sensor for about 150, 200 bucks. Take it in restaurants, take it to school, share it with your friends, but understand what the air is like wherever you go. Use MERV 13 air filtration. MERV 8 does nothing. MERV 11 starts to do something, but MERV 13, MERV 16, HEPA, that's what you need. Recirculate air through that to further reduce contagion. And of course, wear face masks and distancing. I hope to be telling you quite soon about an experiment that colleagues of mine at the University of Illinois will be running at one of our favorite jazz venues, but one in which we're going to be monitoring CO2, and we're going to be monitoring particulates, and we're going to be changing the airflow and the filtration level, and we're also going to be monitoring microbes, not COVID microbes, but other microbes that act as a tracer for COVID concentrations, for the SARS-CoV-2 virus that is wreaking all of this disaster around the world. And so we're going to a local venue, but we're only allowing University of Illinois students and personnel. The University of Illinois, because of excellent campus leadership and highly talented faculty, early in this pandemic, they took charge when the country was in a confused mess, and they came up with a very simple saliva test. I test every week. Undergraduate students test twice a week, but we have the largest COVID safe population you'll find anywhere. And the reason we know it's safe is because we extensively test. And so we're going to run an experiment in a local bar, a favorite jazz venue for local residents. We'll bring in a COVID safe crowd with COVID safe university students as performers, thanks to our wonderful jazz performance faculty. And then with environmental engineering faculty who are doing the hard work and running these tests, we're going to measure and put together guidelines that show and demonstrate that we can stay open and control COVID. So watch for news about that. We hope to have this running online. And if you can't watch it live, that you'll be able to enjoy some wonderful jazz, as well as in the near future, I hope, see the outcome of the data that we collected.